It's now been just about a year and a half since Splatoon 3 launched on the Nintendo Switch back at the tail end of 2022. And yes, it's 2024 now, and I've been thinking about the future of the series, especially since its brand new side order DLC had just released. Couldn't help but start thinking of the future of the franchise and exactly when this next game could come. So I want to break down everything that Splatoon 4 could be and how it could actually be a huge game for the series, kind of reinventing some of the things that we loved, essentially making yet again another awesome Splatoon title. But before we get started, stop what you're doing. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you love Splatoon. A lot of you watching this video right now are not yet subscribed. Let's see how many people we could get to subscribe from this one video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's jump into the future of Splatoon. So the first big question we have to answer is, when is Splatoon 4 actually coming out? Well, we know that the DLC for Splatoon 2, being the Octo expansion, came out in the year of 2018, which was right around a 1-year gap from Splatoon 2 launching in 2017. Splatoon 3 would then be 4 years after the DLC, but 5 years after Splatoon 2, so we're looking at about a 5-year development time. And something else to take in consideration is Nintendo is still doing updates for Splatoon 3 all the way until the end of this year, which makes a lot of sense considering the rumors suggesting that now Switch 2 will not be launching until the beginning of next year. That gives them all year to have more seasons, and obviously we just got the side order DLC expansion as well. Now, like I said, it's been about a year and a half since Splatoon 3 launched, so the DLC almost ended up taking 2 years to come out, which is a pretty long gap. Normally it's within the year, so perhaps there's a reason they stretched it out. It's hard to say, but yeah, it did take a while to get this side order DLC, which didn't seem too incredibly deep, but it's hard to say. Now, obviously the stretch of times were a lot bigger between Splatoon 2 to 3 than it was from 1 to 2, because moving from the Wii U to the Switch from Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 2 only took 2 years. Now, a lot of this was because the Wii U was already dead and they weren't getting as much of a player base as they would like, so obviously they would want this brand new series to be the first thing, or one of the first games on a brand new console, and we could be seeing something very familiar. So using this data, let's try to figure out when we could get Splatoon 4. I personally think it's going to take around 4 to 5 years, and I would say around 2026 to 2027. If the Switch 2 does come out at the beginning of next year, that does put this game as a title for year 2 or year 3 of Switch 2. Personally, I feel like they want to get this game out on the first couple of years of the brand new console, so I would say the best bet is probably seeing this game sometime around 2026. Something else I am, of course, keeping in mind is that Wii U to Switch time being only 2 years. I know is because of the Wii U, so it's a different situation, but it is still, once again, moving from one console to the other. That's exactly what we're doing right here. We're moving from the Switch to the Switch 2, and Nintendo is going to want to get out a brand new Splatoon on this brand new Switch with its brand new graphics and hardware. You know, they're going to want to do that. So I think the time is going to be a lot shorter than what it would usually be, around 5 to maybe even 6 years. I think they're going to shorten it to maybe 4 years. Sounds about right. Now, I hope it's not rushed, of course, but I feel like that's probably Nintendo's best bet. But yes, I'm going with 2016. I think they could definitely push 2017, but then I think they would be getting carried away, and then it's like year 3 of the new console, and I feel like they want to get this game out before entering year 3. But to me, this just makes the most sense, and I can see it being announced at the very tail end of 2015 or the beginning of 2016 for the big holiday game of 2016. But, you know, it could definitely be past this. Once again, it just depends on how Nintendo wants to handle this with this new console. That whole thing with the Switch 2 is confusing, so it's hard to say right now what Nintendo's planning on doing. So now we have the win. It's time for the what. What is Splatoon 4 going to be? Something I talk about a lot is how Nintendo had hinted at and even stated that Splatoon 3 was going to be end of the current story before, you know, moving on to something else, I guess. A lot of people were scared that this was going to be the end of Splatoon. No, it's like the biggest franchise in Japan, like, ever, and it's like huge even here in the West. So, like, yeah, Splatoon is definitely not ending. It's a brand new series that's going to continue to grow probably forever. But yeah, I read comments all the time that say, Nintendo Land, we don't remember Nintendo saying this. They actually did state it in the Treehouse, where they were actually playing through Alterna, and they did state that this was going to be the end of the story. I don't have the Treehouse event here, but yeah, they did say that this was going to conclude a 3-story arc. So lots of you guys remember, but some of you guys like to also, you know, press me with that in the comments for some reason. If you paid attention to the story, it definitely feels like that. There's still always going to be questions and stuff, and that's things that they can answer within the next game's story. But for the most part, they did kind of wrap up the overall story. I mean, we know everything that we needed to know. We know exactly what happened to the human race. We can even see bunkers and stuff of what what happened, the last surviving remnants of the human race and stuff, like Commander Tartar, and also, you know, Mr. Grizz being in space on the Arc Polaris. We kind of got all the answers we currently need to figure out exactly what happened back in the day, and even with the Great Turf War. So I really wouldn't mind them starting a new story, maybe in some other region of the world that's not Splatsville. In a past video, I kind of went into details about what the brand new story could be and where they could actually take it. So for the most part, I would love to see it be a almost soft reboot of the entire franchise. That includes the multiplayer, the story, everything. And I feel like we've always spent our time in the glamorous cities of Inkopolis Square, Plaza, the Splatlands, and everybody's having a great time. But I also feel like some other portions of the world, there are Inklings and Octolings maybe that aren't having such a great time. And maybe if they are, it's in a different region with a different vibe. There's no giant city skyscrapers or towns to visit. And like how I stated this before, I would love a Splatoon game that maybe focuses on an island. Maybe it's an entire island. It doesn't have to be massive, but just big enough to have multiple different maps for them to play on. Everything between the maps and obviously the campaign and the story revolves around this island. And maybe the Inklings and Octolings can't get off the island. They got trapped there for some reason or another. And yeah, they're just stuck there because they're surrounded by water. That would be really, really cool. I think a tropical island landscape completely changes what we've been seeing from the last 3 Splatoon games and gives us a new theme in a new area of part of a world that's been taken over by Inklings and Octolings. I would love to see other locations as well. This would be great. I would also love it if this game just started its own new trilogy of new idols, new characters, and maybe new agents or something that they go off of completely different. Maybe it's not even agents this time, it's something else. Which also leads me to a video I talked about yesterday where I was discussing how cool it would be to finally have an adventure mode. Maybe new bigger areas that are kind of interconnected that we can kind of explore, paint up walls or mountains or cliffs and climb up and find collectibles, defeat enemies, and solve our own objectives at our own pace, at least. That would be really cool instead of just, you know, complete the obstacle in the sky, get to the end. We've been doing this for 4 campaigns, and the 5th one being a roguelike, which still really isn't quite the adventure mode that we've been hoping for. Yes, I love DJ Octavio being an antagonist, but having the stories with new antagonists and new motives was always super exciting to me. Like, for instance, Agent Tartar was awesome. I love his whole history about how he was supposed to pass on human knowledge, and now he wants to enslave them by sanitizing them. It's just very unique, and I hope we get a new antagonist that kind of relates to some type of lore of the past with the humans as well. And I want this whole concept of it being fresh and almost a soft reboot to apply to the multiplayer as well. For one, I would love to see a new reinvention of the weapons. We can still have obviously our same weapon classes. We can still have the shooters, the blasters, the chargers, the rollers, even the brushes, you know, everything that made Splatoon 1 through 3 Splatoon 1 through 3. But maybe adding some new mechanics to some of those would be really, really cool. For instance, you know how the Splatbrella actually can give you a shield? The same way the dualies allow you to do a dodge roll, I would love if each weapon was received some type of mechanic that you can do with that weapon. Now, it doesn't have to be something extremely OP, but I just find it weird how some weapons have some weird, you know, extra gimmick to them and some don't. Maybe a weapon that allows you to slide or dive, and that actually brings me into my next thing is adding new things to the Inklings and Octolings movements. What if instead of just the Squid Surge and Squid Roll, we actually got movements based on their kit forms as well? For instance, you could slide like I just said, or dive out of the way, or maybe like a quick wall jump or climb. I know you can ink up a wall and swim up it, so that would kind of defeat the purpose of climbing, but you know what I mean. The stages, on the other hand, need a serious overhaul. Like, I'm not a huge competitive Splatoon player, at least not anymore. I used to be very big back on Splatoon 1, but as time went on, I just kind of lost my interest, and I feel like a lot of it does have to do with the stages. They just don't feel interesting, and when we get updates of new stages, they don't do anything super different than the last. And I've seen a lot of competitive players complain about this because, yes, if you look at every single stage design, for the most part, it's just a straight line from spawn to the middle, where the middle of the map is some type of tower or raised platform or structure, and it just feels the same every single update. There's no flanks, there's no secret passageways, there's no interesting areas a part of the map. It feels like you're always just funneled in this little hallway the entire time. And in a game where ink is flying around and specials are being used like every 15 seconds, it's really just not fun to just get splatted in every single direction because the map just feels so small and confined. I know it's hard and it kind of sucks because Nintendo wants to keep both sides of the map exactly the same. I feel like there's still a way they can make both sides equal but look different. It would just take a lot of planning and a lot of time, but don't call me insane yet, but hear me out. What if we had more maps with more diversity and areas to climb and places to go, like the NILS statue from the end of the Octo expansion DLC? Like both teams just start off on both sides of the statue and just go at it and try to clear the statue as much as they can, or the structure, or whatever they're on. And you can see like a 3D holographic version of the map, and you can maybe like spin it around, or as you go around it, you can like change it around and see what sides you have painted or haven't painted, or what sides are painted by the enemy team. This way there's lots of flanks and enemies all over the place, and you have to like climb to find them, and you know, it's not just like a big old flat stage. Like I said, I know that sounds crazy, but it would make actually painting the map so much fun, like actually counting the walls this time around and stuff. That'd be pretty cool, and I would love just a drastic change like that, or maybe just something small, like something we get in Splatfest only or something. The maps also just need more variety and more things going on in the map as well, like more turrets or things that you can get into, like little vehicles, or just different things that just change the way the map works, different mechanics at least. Do you remember the shifty stations from the Splatfest of Splatoon 2? They were so good. Some of the best stages I think we've ever seen, with some truly unique aspects to them, like moving around the walls, or changing the way the stage works, or having tons of things from the single player slapped into this map in the multiplayer. It made Splatfest actually fun and worthwhile. Which also segues into my next problem: we need better Splatfest, man. They are just not that interesting. I just don't have a fun time going back and revisiting the Splatfest anymore. I used to play every single one in Splatoon 1, and I played about half of them in Splatoon 2, and I can tell you confidently right now, I think I barely played 2 Splatfests in the entirety of Splatoon 3. It may have only been 1. They just don't seem that interesting. There's no real special thing that happens. Yeah, it's nighttime, okay, but that's it. There's no special stages like they did with Splatoon 2. There's no like real big incentive besides, you know, getting snails and obviously upgrading gear. But if you're not a complete competitive player, you really don't have any interest in jumping into these things, especially when they're only for a specific weekend at a time. I just never really had that feeling of jumping in. And maybe I'm just tired of Splatfest, but for instance, they also need to just change it back to 2 sides. I feel like 3 sides is cool when it comes to choosing, but man, it's just clear as day that it's always like a battle between 2 teams, and that's Big Man and obviously Shiver, because I'm sorry, Team Fry, not only do you guys just keep getting blasted, I think it might just be a skill issue at this point, because like Team Fry never ever wins. Something else I would really love is just way more game modes. Right now, it feels very limited, and I cannot believe there hasn't been a single new game mode in the entirety of Splatoon 3. That's just not okay. I don't like to compare it to games like Call of Duty because it's definitely not that, but it definitely does take inspiration from other multiplayer shooters like Call of Duty with its game modes. For one, we should be able to play all the game modes in casual and in competitive, and we should be able to choose what game modes we want to play when we want to play them. Because just only being able to play Turf War for casual just doesn't feel right. But as original as Turf War is, it's clear that Splatoon takes inspiration from other shooters just like Call of Duty because they have modes that represent those just in their own Splatoon fashion. For instance, they tested modes like Capture the Flag with Rainmaker, or Move the Payload with Tower Control, and even Domination with Splat Zones, so they could experiment with others like Search and Destroy mode, where you have to defuse a bomb or defeat the other team, Team Deathmatch, where you have to wipe out everybody on the other team a certain amount of times to get the victory, or maybe even a free-for-all where everybody's on their own team and the last one surviving wins, or something like Gun Game, where you switch guns every kill until you've cycled through all the guns of that round. I know people are going to take this the wrong way and think that I'm just wishing for Splatoon to turn into Call of Duty. No, I am not a fan of Call of Duty, and I don't want that for the series. In fact, I think it would be horrible, and that's why I feel like Call of Duty is definitely on the downfall, but I feel like with its creativity, it can definitely come up with even more game modes, and I feel like a game like Call of Duty that has like over 20 to 30 different game modes in its multiplayer, Splatoon definitely could have more because it just has the more creative freedom that games like Call of Duty lack. I would also love to see different game modes with different sized teams as well. Why does it always have to be 4v4? I mean, I would love like a 2v2 game mode on smaller maps, or maybe even a 1v1 on a very small map would be really, really fun. Or maybe something a lot bigger like 5v5, 6v6, or even 10v10, something along the lines of a ground war like they have in Call of Duty, where it's a giant massive battle, a 10v10 where there's different items, weapons, vehicles, and stuff that you can ride in order to cover the entire area. I mean, they could raise the clock to like 10 minutes so that way you can spend as much time as as you want, clearing the area, and just have like a massive turf war. It could literally be like a reenactment of the Great Turf War, because I'm sure the Great Turf War between the Inklings and the Octarians weren't just in a straight line in a small area. I'm sure it was a massive map. So I would love something along those lines. Giving us a massive map with a lot bigger teams, I think could be really fun. I also do not mind Salmon Run making a return. I just feel like maybe let's not call it Salmon Run. Let's have new enemies instead of Salmonid, maybe like sharks or a new type of fish, a new species or something that you have to fight, like eels or something. I don't know, just something completely different. I feel like the Salmonid are just kind of, you know, outdone now, and I feel like they need to just change up how this is actually played. I wouldn't mind if they actually like combine Salmon Run to be kind of like a roguelike, very similar to Side Order, where you have to do a co-op mission actually achieving something, maybe specific missions together where you have to like move an 8-ball or something while also fending off enemies. Just think of Side Order, but as a multiplayer thing where you could play with people in co-op, and maybe there's just like different stages and stuff every month or something, or a different stage or level every month that you have to complete to get to the end. That would draw people back more often and be like, oh, there's a new map for us to complete and get to the end of. Let's see if we can do it this month. Then, oh, next month there's another map, or oh, this one's a lot harder this month, and you get special rewards each month for doing that. Ooh, that would be a lot of fun, and I think it definitely would make me want to play Salmon Run a lot more, instead of the same old stay alive and collect eggs until the timer runs out thing. And look, I know people are going to consistently beat me up for comparing Splatoon with games like Call of Duty and Fortnite, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's inspiration. You can see, like I said earlier, Nintendo is gathering inspiration from these other shooters. It's Nintendo's first shooter. You know, you're not going to just completely make up every single concept. Some of the game modes and stuff that happens is stuff that they're just going to have to evolve with in their own take and their own spin. And the same thing goes with BRs. You know, Nintendo just journeyed into the roguelike area, so why not do that with Battle Royale? I know everyone claims they hate Battle Royale, but it's the reason why games like Apex Legends, Warzone, and even Fortnite are still on top even today. And that's because games like this are ongoing. They feel fresh and could actually keep people pumped up for new seasons and map changes, and instead of having a battle pass like all these other companies have, Nintendo could have their free catalogs that they've already created for Splatoon 3, and this would work the same way by unlocking free rewards by winning or getting kills or completing challenges. Nintendo loves their 99 games online, so why not have the opportunity of a lifetime to have a real Battle Royale 99 game for the first time ever for Nintendo, but an actual one with Splatoon. As much as you hate it, Fortnite has been around since 2018 and has rarely dropped, and when it has, it went right back up because of its new seasons and new chapters, adding new weapons, gameplay mechanics, and map changes as well, including new maps altogether. This is something that Nintendo could do, or maybe even make it a separate thing that's not directly tied into Splatoon 4, but just a separate thing you can download for free and play called Splatter Royale or something along those lines. I made so many concepts of this, and I still really hope that this happens someday, but it just sounds too good to me. Thinking of having a map full of some of the best multiplayer maps from Splatoon's series all kind of slapped together in like a city environment, being able to paint up onto the rooftops and climb buildings and skyscrapers and stuff would be so cool. Collecting gear like shields and sub-weapons and special weapons you can pick up, very similar to the campaigns. It would just make too much sense, and I really hope there's a way that Nintendo can figure out how to do this in the future. But with Splatoon 4 more than likely going to be a big game on the next console, I can't wait to see exactly what it's going to look like, how good the graphics will actually be, and if it's going to incorporate any new crazy mechanic thanks to the new hardware. But it's impossible to say right now, considering the fact that we don't know what the new hardware actually is, and only time will tell until we get more information on that. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and let me know in the comments down below what you are hoping to see within the next Splatoon. When do you think Splatoon 4 is actually going to happen? Do you agree with my time frame? And what do you want to see from the game? Make sure you leave a like and subscribe before you guys head out, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.